President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth addressed the U.S. military's generals and admirals in Virginia this morning, and the federal government is poised to shut down after midnight. Good morning. I'm Windsor Johnston from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. Tonight is the deadline for Congress to strike a bipartisan compromise to avert a government shutdown. Democratic leaders left a White House meeting on Monday without reaching a deal with Republicans. NPR's Sam Greenglass reports the two sides remain far apart on key issues, and the stalemate could lead to agency closures starting at midnight.
Outside the White House, Democratic leadership called the discussion frank and direct, but Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said large differences remain.
I think for the first time, the president heard our objections and heard why we needed a bipartisan bill. Their bill has not one iota of Democratic input.
Democrats want the stopgap funding measure to include an extension of subsidies for health insurance premiums set to expire this year, something Republicans have resisted. Here's Vice President Vance.
I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to see.
Without action, the government will shut down Wednesday at 12:01 a.m. Sam Greenglass, NPR News.
President Trump is delivering remarks at a rare gathering of top military leaders in Virginia. Speaking at Quantico, Trump reaffirmed his commitment to service members and pledged to bolster the armed forces.
We're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even waver a little bit.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth opened the address with a strong defense of the U.S. military, saying America must be ready for war. Hegseth also criticized diversity initiatives, arguing that past promotions based on identity rather than combat readiness had hurt the force. Military leaders were summoned to Quantico on short notice last week, with many of them traveling from military command posts from around the world. President Trump has unveiled what he calls a comprehensive plan to end the war in Gaza and promote broader peace in the region. Israel has accepted the plan. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports Trump says he's now waiting on Hamas.
The 20-point plan calls for the release of all hostages within 72 hours and says Gaza will be a, quote, de-radicalized, terror-free zone. The UN and international aid groups will be able to bring in food and humanitarian goods into Gaza, which will be run by a new transitional authority. President Trump says the people of Israel want this war to end.
They say two things. Please get the hostages back and please end the war. They've had it.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the plan achieves Israel's war aims, a Gaza that won't be run by Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
But as NPR's Emily Fang reports, far-right politicians and Netanyahu's coalition are unhappy.
A person briefed by an Israeli official has told NPR Netanyahu will not bring Trump's plan for a vote in his cabinet. This is to prevent two far-right ministers from quitting their posts in Netanyahu's political coalition and thus toppling the current government. These two ministers, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, are in opposition to the 20-point peace plan because it encourages some 2 million Palestinians to remain in the Gaza Strip following any ceasefire and the return of hostages. The two opposing ministers had been pushing to forcibly displace Palestinians from Gaza, annex the territory, and let Israeli settlers move back in. Emily Fang, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
YouTube has agreed to pay $24 million to settle a lawsuit brought by Donald Trump in 2021. NPR's Bobby Allen reports several social media sites banned Trump after the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol building.
The settlement documents say most of the money Google is paying will go toward the construction of a Mar-a-Lago-style ballroom in the White House. YouTube's payout follows similar settlements over Trump's suspensions from Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly Twitter. Free speech experts question the suits since First Amendment cases tend to involve government censoring speech, not private companies. The White House and Google declined to comment. It comes days after YouTube reinstated accounts suspended over spreading COVID and election misinformation, including podcaster Dan Bongino, who is now the FBI's deputy director. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
Prosecutors in New York are urging a federal judge to sentence music mogul Sean Diddy Combs to more than 11 years in prison. They filed their sentencing recommendation this morning, along with letters from some of his accusers. Combs has remained jailed since he was convicted on prostitution-related charges in July. A group of psychiatrists is calling for the removal of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. NPR's Ritu Chatterjee reports they're accusing Kennedy of threatening Americans' access to mental health and addiction care.
The group, called the Committee to Protect Public Mental Health, says Secretary Kennedy has hurt the federal government's ability to respond to the mental health and addiction crises by making major staffing and funding cuts to the federal mental health agency. Dr. Eric Rafla-Yuan is a psychiatrist based in San Diego and a member of the group.
It's very important to not miss that RFK Jr. has been very focused in his attacks against psychiatric medication, which millions of Americans rely on. And so this includes for ADHD, for depression, for anxiety, for schizophrenia.
He says these medications have measurable impacts on people's well-being and functioning. Ritu Chatterjee, NPR News.
That sound, once the gateway to the World Wide Web, is finally being silenced. AOL is officially shutting down its dial-up internet service today, marking the end of a digital era that peaked with chat rooms, You've Got Mail, and painfully slow downloads. Fewer than 250,000 people still use dial-up in the U.S. According to census data, most of them live in rural areas. I'm Windsor Johnston, NPR News, in Washington.